Pakistan's peace talks break down, but the Taliban ceasefire remains in place. Can it last, or will a government refusal to pull its troops from the troubled tribal areas only fuel the Taliban's resistance? And can a peace accord between the two even be finalised amidst the scepticism of the US and the rejection of President Musharraf? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Kamal Santamaria. It's been something of a radical departure for Pakistan, talking with the Taliban rather than simply attacking it. The new Pakistani government had been engaging with militant groups from its tribal border regions with Afghanistan, hoping to cement a deal to end hostilities. But on Monday, a top Taliban commander pulled out of the talks because Islamabad wouldn't do the same with its forces in those areas. The ceasefire remains in place, though, brought about when tribal leader Baitullah Masood told his supporters to end attacks in the country last week. But the troop withdrawal was one of the key elements in the deal, which the government hoped would help isolate al-Qaeda elements in the border region. Islamabad was also negotiating to deliver development projects to the area and to help with job creation. In exchange, Masood's tribes would have worked to expel foreign fighters from their territory and prevent areas under their control from being used as a base for activities in Afghanistan. But there's scepticism over the whole deal from Afghan and American officials who don't think talking will achieve anything. Washington emphasises it doesn't think Pakistan's taking enough military action to deal with the Taliban in Pakistan. Well, the Taliban is active in the northwest parts of Pakistan, specifically in the region bordering Afghanistan. Tribal leaders are concentrated in the state of Waziristan. Masood, the commander who pulled out of those talks on Monday, operates in the southern part of that area. Well, joining us to discuss these issues are our guests in Lahore. Jalil Afridi, he is the managing editor of the Frontier Post. And in Washington, D.C., Shuja Nawaz, a journalist and author of the book Crossed Sword, Pakistan, Its Army and the War Within. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us here on Inside Story. I'm going to go first to Lahore and speak to Jalil Afridi. Mr. Afridi, the idea of agreements and deals in the first place. President Musharraf did try it before, and it didn't really work. So what's to say that this is going to work this time?
Well, first of all, I don't think that previously the dialogue which was held with the tribal people, I don't think it was either done with too much enthusiasm or too much efforts, because at the same time so much bombardment was happening and so many innocent people at the same time were killed that the dialogue process was not considered an effective thing by the people of the tribal area, because they thought that this is not the right way, because at the same time you were killing the people and at the same time you were talking, so both of these things couldn't work at the same time. This time, hopefully, by not striking them, by not killing them, I think they would be thinking more serious on the lines, they would be giving it more importance. Plus, new government has taken place, that is going to play its role, especially the new government in NWFP, which is of ANP. People have a lot of expectation from them that because of being Pakhtuns, they could probably speak to the tribal people according to their culture and their language. Previously there were some people who were holding talks with the tribals who were not even Pathans, so being from a different culture, speaking a different language, it was kind of difficult to understand.
But there are two issues
between the two parties.
Sorry to interrupt you.
This time it's going to probably bear some fruits.
There are two issues I see, though. One is that the Taliban has said we still reserve the right, if you like, to retaliate if there are any attacks. And also the fact is they want these troops to leave. They want the Pakistani troops to leave, and they don't look like they're going anywhere.
Well, you see, first of all, it seems like that the international media does not have a clear perspective of the tribal areas too well, because they have not gone inside, they have not worked inside, they haven't met the people too well. I think that by this interaction of the media and by highlighting these issues which you are doing right now, I think it's gonna bring a positive result. What you said that previously efforts were made, but I think this time it's gonna be a little bit different. I think this time it's gonna bear fruits. And you see, the tribal people have been living a very neglected and a very poor life for a long time. You know, they have been living in this area where till this day there are no schools, you know, no hospitals, no police stations even. And the local people were demanding that all these things should be brought in there, you know, the basic things which builds a government, which the people you know, feel protected of. If you live in a certain condition for so many years, then of course your nature is going to change, you know. The tribal people, which I'm one of them myself, and the Frontier Post is, you know, the only paper in Pakistan till this date which is being owned by, you know, Pakhtuns and the tribals. It seems like, you know, this time people are going to know the tribal people in a better way through this media thing, you know, through us discussing this thing.
Okay,
so I think we should be positive about it. Basically, my theme is that we should be positive about this dialogue process. We should not take it in a negative way.
Right. Let's put some of these ideas to Shuja Nawaz in Washington, D.C. Do you think this can be successful, given that as Jalil Afridi's pointed out, there's a different government in power this time, and they're dealing directly with the people?
I think so. I think this is a recognition on the part of the government that military action alone cannot work, particularly in FATA, the federally administered tribal area that we're talking about. And it has never worked in the past solely by itself. Even in other counterinsurgencies, the military action is only 10% of the effort. 90% has to be political and economic. And I agree with Mr. Afridi that you have to provide people with the opportunities to get jobs, to make their own living, and to give them the basic education and health facilities. Just to give you an idea, if you compare the literacy rate for Pakistan as a whole, it's somewhere in the order of 45%. And for FATA, it is somewhere around 17%. So there's a huge gap that has to be filled. There's even a gap between FATA and the rest of the NWFP, the Northwest Frontier Province, which is at 37%. Similarly, you don't have enough doctors per population. In fact, you have something like 1,450 people per hospital bed in Pakistan, and you have almost twice that number in FATA. That's one side. The other is you have to provide security. And you can't provide security to the people if you have basically destroyed the local systems, which was the tribal Malik system. The jirgas haven't been functioning effectively, and you've basically cut off the political administrators, the civil servants who made a career of working in those areas. You cut them off at the first time when the army went in without consulting them nor the Maliks. So you can't undermine the local structures because the tribal area, as Mr. Afridi knows too well, functions on rivaj, which is custom. And customs are very important.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you there because I'd actually like to bring in a third voice at the moment, another perspective from the United States. Bill Roggio is the editor of the Long War Journal, and he joins us from Philadelphia. From your perspective, and from perhaps you can enlighten us to a US perspective, do you think talking was the right option here?
I believe that the Pakistani government is making a very big mistake thinking that they could negotiate with the Taliban again. This was tried in 2006 and 2007, and it failed miserably. They negotiated with the Taliban, and the Taliban immediately broke every condition that was set forth. They established a parallel administration. They provided the Taliban created their security forces, created recruiting centers. Attacks inside Pakistan itself increased. Baitullah Masood led a vicious suicide bombing campaign against the Pakistani people, the Pakistani government. Attacks in Afghanistan increased, and attacks and planned and plotted attacks increased across the globe as the Taliban and Al-Qaeda established training camps in North and South Waziristan alone. 29 known training camps. That was as of last summer, and throughout the tribal agencies, and even through the Northwest Frontier Province, the settled districts, the Taliban was gaining ground.
But as one
I
of my
do
earlier
agree that
guests,
in economic and
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I just want to bring in a point that one of my early guests brought in, was that this time around there is a difference. There is a new government and they are dealing directly with the people of the tribal areas, not just the Taliban, but the actual people, and going in there and talking directly to them. Can that not make a difference this time?
In the case of the agreement that was signed up in the north, in the Bajor Swat Deer region, they dealt directly with the TNSM. They let Sufi Muhammad go. This is a known Taliban commander. He leads the TNSM ideologically, led 10,000 troops to attack 10,000 Taliban fighters to attack U.S. forces in Afghanistan. And his TNSM, his Fakir Muhammad, the leader of the TNSM in Bajor, has hosted Ayman al-Zawahiri in his madrasa. I mean, these are the people that the Pakistani government is dealing with. The last time around, the Pakistani government told us that they were dealing with the tribes and not with the Taliban. This time around, they're dealing directly with the Taliban. The government said openly that they will negotiate with Baitullah Masood. This is the man that led a suicide campaign against the Pakistani people, and that is accused and admitted on videotape, or I'm sorry, on a phone conversation, that he was behind the assassination of Benazir Bhutto.
Let's get a quick thought from Shuja Nawaz in Washington, D.C. before we go to the break. Your thoughts on what you've just heard there from Bill Roggio. He's saying basically that history dictates that we're going down a dangerous path here.
I think to some extent he's correct that if you make deals and you basically evacuate the area and leave space open, of course there's a vacuum created and the Taliban will fill it, as they did the last time. I haven't seen the Urdu version of this 15-point agreement, but in the English version, the last point actually bothers me too, which is that the Pakistan army will be withdrawn. If the Pakistan army is withdrawn, it will basically be giving the territory back to the Taliban, who live there and who will occupy it and will start administering it. So I think the proper approach is going to be to keep the army in, to continue putting pressure, to make sure that nobody fills this vacuum of military activity, and then to rebuild the tribal system, the jirgas, the maliks, and the political administration, because the economics side is going to take quite a long time. And there, it's not just the Pakistan side of the border, it also has to be the Afghan side of the border. It's really 25 million Pashtun economy on both sides of the Durand line. And there's, it's been criminal in my mind, the neglect of both the US government and the Pakistan government in not developing these areas.
Okay then, we're going to take a quick break here on Inside Story. Do stay with us. When we come back, we'll look further into the regional situation and the impact of these tribal discussions on Pakistan's neighbours. Back in a moment.